What if I told you that one of the most famous women in human history never looked the way you think she looked, never spoke the language you think she spoke, was never actually Egyptian by blood, never seduced anyone into destroying their own country, and yet somehow became so dangerous to Roman power that they spent 2,000 years turning her into a cartoon villain? Her name is Cleopatra, and almost everything you think you know about her is wrong. Hollywood painted her as an exotic seductress who used beauty as a weapon of mass destruction. Shakespeare made her a lovesick drama queen who killed herself over a broken heart. Schoolbooks reduced her to that woman Mark Antony loved. Ptolemaic dynasty propaganda called her a foreign usurper. But underneath 2,000 years of lies, manipulation, sexist erasure, and Hollywood glitter is something far more extraordinary. A teenage girl who ruled alone at 18, a scholar fluent in 9 languages, a naval commander who financed wars, a diplomat who negotiated with Rome's most powerful men on equal terms while her kingdom was being dismantled piece by piece. This is not the Cleopatra of movies or plays or tabloid history. This is the real woman. And her story isn't just about ancient Egypt. It's about power, sexism, racism, propaganda, and the terrifying fragility of reputation when the people writing your history are also the people trying to destroy your legacy. If you want history that punches through the myth and lands on reality, hit subscribe. This is going to take us deep. Let's go. Chapter 1. She wasn't who you think she was. Before we can understand what Cleopatra did, we have to unlearn almost everything we've been told about who she was. Let me start with the biggest surprise. Cleopatra was not Egyptian, she was Greek. Specifically, she was part of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the family founded by Ptolemy, one of Alexander the Great's generals, after Alexander conquered Egypt in 332 BCE. The Ptolemies had ruled Egypt for nearly 300 years before Cleopatra was born. They were Macedonian Greeks. They kept themselves genetically separate from native Egyptians. They practiced brother-sister marriage to preserve the royal bloodline. They didn't even bother learning Egyptian until it became politically necessary. Cleopatra herself was the first member of her entire dynasty to actually learn Egyptian fluently. Now let's address what everyone asks first. What did she actually look like? The short answer, we don't know exactly, but we know enough to say definitively that she was nothing like Elizabeth Taylor. Roman historians described her not through physical beauty descriptions, but through presence. They wrote about her voice, musical, persuasive, hypnotic. They wrote about her intelligence, able to hold conversations about philosophy, mathematics, finance, theology, and law simultaneously with multiple scholars in different languages. Plutarch called her irresistible, not because of beauty, but because of charm, wit, education, and conversational brilliance. The coins minted during her reign show a strong-featured woman with a hooked nose, a prominent chin, a determined jawline, more regal than glamorous, more monarch than model. And here's the thing those old sources understood that we keep forgetting. In a world where women were legally property, Cleopatra wasn't valuable because she was pretty. She was terrifying because she was competent. The Romans who hated her couldn't reduce her to just another sexualized foreign queen because her actual political achievements were too massive to ignore. So instead, they tried to destroy her the only way they could, turning the powerful statesman into the tragic lover. If Cleopatra was just a desperate, love-struck seductress, then nothing she accomplished actually matters. If she was just a pawn between men, then her victories weren't real, her strategies weren't genius, and Rome's conquest of Egypt doesn't look like the destruction of a capable sovereign. It looks like a rescue operation. That reframing served Rome perfectly, and we've been buying it ever since. Chapter 2. Born into a sinking ship. To understand why Cleopatra's story matters, you have to grasp how impossibly bad her situation was when life handed her the worst possible deck. She was born around 69 BCE. Her father was Ptolemy XII, widely considered the weakest, most incompetent ruler in 3 centuries of Ptolemaic history. He'd lost control of Cyprus to Rome. He owed astronomical debts. He faced constant rebellion within his own court. Egypt was technically independent but functionally becoming a client state of Rome, paying tribute, making concessions, watching Roman legions march closer and closer to his borders every year. When he died in 51 BCE, Cleopatra was 18 years old. She inherited a throne, an economy collapsing under debt, a military hollowed out by corruption, a court filled with advisors who wanted her dead or removed, and neighbors who smelled weakness. Here's what nobody prepared her for. Within weeks of taking power, her own generals and advisors orchestrated a coup against her. Think about that. She is 18, new to power, surrounded by men who have been playing palace politics since before she was born, and they force her out. Not into exile, that would be too easy. Into exile in the Syrian desert, where bandits roam and Roman governors watch hungrily for any opportunity to intervene in Egyptian affairs. At this moment, any normal person would have accepted defeat, made peace, taken a quiet retirement, waited for some distant relative to reclaim the throne. Instead, Cleopatra began raising an army, in exile, at 18, with no legitimate treasury access, in hostile territory near a border controlled by Rome's ally King Hyrcanus II. This is where we start seeing the real pattern of her character emerge. When backed into corners, she does not surrender. She escalates, she builds, she negotiates, she finds leverage no one else sees exists. While her brother's supporters thought they'd won forever, Cleopatra was building alliances with local rulers, Arab tribes, mercenary commanders, and anyone else who might prefer a Ptolemaic restoration to full Roman annexation. Because here's what everyone in the region understood. If Cleopatra falls and her brother becomes permanent puppet king for Rome, the whole balance of power shifts against all of them. She turned regional self-interest into coalition politics, and she used that coalition to force her way back into Alexandria, not at the head of a conquering army, but with enough soldiers and diplomatic pressure that her brother's council had to negotiate a co-regency arrangement. Co-ruling Egypt, with the man whose advisors tried to kill her. For now, because Cleopatra understood something her enemies kept underestimating, time favors the patient. Chapter 3. Caesar, not love, leverage. Now we arrive at the relationship everyone knows. Julius Caesar enters Alexandria in 48 BCE. He's pursuing his rival Pompey. Pompey has fled to Egypt seeking protection. Ptolemy's advisors decide to assassinate Pompey and present his severed head to Caesar as a gift, thinking they'll buy Roman favor by proving loyalty. Caesar is horrified by the gesture. He becomes outraged at the brutality. Meanwhile, Cleopatra realizes this moment is her opening, not romantically, but strategically. Here is what actually happened according to contemporary sources and modern scholarship. Cleopatra was still officially locked out of the palace, confined by the co-regency arrangement, effectively living under house arrest while pretending cooperation. To meet Caesar privately without alerting her brother's spy network, she reportedly had herself wrapped inside a carpet or bedding roll and carried into his quarters. Whether literally true or metaphorical, and honestly, both versions are symbolic enough to matter, the key point is this: she initiated the contact. She took the risk. She chose vulnerability to create opportunity. Their relationship quickly combined political necessity with genuine connection. Caesar needed Egyptian grain supplies for his troops. He needed money. He needed someone local who could actually run the bureaucracy while he managed Roman affairs across the eastern Mediterranean. Cleopatra needed Roman recognition, military support, elimination of rivals who threatened her position, and legitimacy that came from association with Rome's strongest man. It was mutual exploitation dressed up as romance. Or maybe romantic attraction layered on top of ruthless calculation, probably both. And for roughly 2 years, they were inseparable political partners who happened to sleep together. Cleopatra gave Caesar what no other leader could give him: local credibility plus resources. She governed Egypt competently while he was away. She managed rebellions. She handled tax collection. She kept the navy functional. She maintained trade routes through territories hostile to Rome. He gave her what no predecessor could provide: Roman protection recognized publicly, legitimization before the Senate, sort of, removal of her brother, co-ruler, from effective power, eventually, and crucially, the birth of a son in 47 BCE named Caesarion, a son fathered by Julius Caesar. Think about the significance: a living male heir acknowledged to carry Caesar's bloodline in a world where patrimony meant everything. This wasn't just a personal bond, it was dynastic strategy. It was Cleopatra building long-term security for her line through biology itself. When Caesar returned to Rome in 46 BCE, Cleopatra stayed behind governing Egypt efficiently. Later that same year, she traveled to Rome with Caesarion, the only time a foreign monarch visited the capital while Caesar lived. Some sources suggest she resided outside the city proper. Others place her inside Caesar's gardens. What's clear, she wasn't hiding. She was presenting herself openly as partner to Rome's dictator for life. Then Caesar was assassinated in March 44 BCE. Everything changed overnight. Chapter 4. Mark Antony. The real romance that almost worked after Caesar's death. Chaos erupted throughout the Roman Republic. Factions formed. Civil war loomed again. Different leaders claimed different pieces of Caesar's legacy. Into this entered Marcus Antonius, Mark Antony, one of Caesar's most trusted lieutenants, now jockeying for control alongside Octavian, later Augustus, and Lepidus in the Second Triumvirate. Cleopatra needed to figure out which Roman faction would protect Egypt best. Antony needed Eastern allies, resources, naval forces, and money to challenge Octavian's growing dominance in Italy. Their meeting in Tarsus in 41 BCE has become legendary. Ancient writers describe her entering on an opulent barge dressed as Aphrodite incarnate, with gold, perfumes, musicians, slaves fanning her. It sounds like pure spectacle until you realize this was calculated theater designed to convey wealth, power, stability, and cultural sophistication. She wasn't seducing Antony. She was auditioning for partnership using visual language he would understand. Antony fell for her, or maybe for what she represented: the last independent Hellenistic monarch with real military, economic, and naval capacity. Their relationship lasted roughly a decade. Longer than most Roman marriages of the era, produced healthy heirs and genuine affection intertwined with complex strategic planning. Together, they launched campaigns together. They shared military victories and embarrassing defeats alike. They entertained extravagantly. The donations of Alexandria ceremony, where they gave vast territories to each other's children from previous relationships, treating the known world like a game board where they were rewriting borders. Modern historians debate endlessly whether Cleopatra really believed Antony could defeat Octavian. Some argue she genuinely thought they could build an Eastern empire rivaling Rome. Others suggest she always had contingency plans and escape routes ready, that she was playing for maximum leverage, betting on uncertainty rather than guaranteed victory. What's undeniable? For 10 years, Cleopatra turned herself from exiled teenager into the single most powerful monarch east of Rome, commanding armies, navies, economies, international coalitions, and diplomatic relationships spanning Africa, Asia Minor, and the Levant. Not through sexuality, through competence. Chapter 5. Actium and the End of Everything. Battle of Actium. September 2nd, 31 BCE. Cleopatra's fleet fighting alongside Antony's fleet against Octavian's forces commanded by Agrippa. They lost badly. Cleopatra's decision to withdraw mid-battle has been debated for centuries. Did she flee out of cowardice? Did she sacrifice Antony to save herself? Or was this a tactical retreat to preserve the fleet and treasury, hoping to fight another day or negotiate better terms? Most serious scholars now lean toward interpretation number 3. She was being practical. Fighting to destruction serves no one. Preserving assets preserves options. The aftermath destroyed everything anyway. Antony committed suicide following rumors that Cleopatra had died. He hadn't. Cleopatra was captured by Octavian's forces. She negotiated briefly, offering him treasure, agreeing to display herself in his triumph parade back in Rome, the ultimate humiliation for defeated monarchs. But she died before that could happen, somewhere around August 30th BCE, age 39. The cause remains disputed. Snakebite is traditional legend supported by Plutarch and others. Poison is possible given her knowledge of pharmacology. We'll probably never know exactly. What we do know, Octavian ordered Caesarion killed. He allowed Cleopatra's children by Antony to survive, taken to Rome and raised by Antony's former wife Octavia, Octavian's sister. He renamed himself Augustus, became first Roman emperor, and spent decades destroying anyone who remembered Egypt had once been independently great. Closure. What Cleopatra actually teaches us. So why does Cleopatra still matter? Why are we still talking about her 2,000 years later, producing new films, books, documentaries, debates? 3 reasons. First, she represents the power of narrative weaponization. The real Cleopatra was a linguist, economist, diplomat, military organizer, and constitutional innovator who ruled through crisis after crisis. The Roman victor-written Cleopatra is a sex-crazed Eastern temptress who ruined good Roman men. Which version got taught? Which version shaped our understanding of female leadership? That tells you everything about who gets to write history and who gets erased from it. Second, she shows what competence looks like under impossible constraints. Teenager ruler, broke government, hostile environment, surrounding empire absorbing everything nearby, internal betrayal, external threat, repeated exile. Yet she remained relevant, feared, respected, allied with, partnered with, never subordinate to. That resilience framework applies wherever power meets prejudice today. Third, she proves that identity is more complicated than labels claim. Was she Egyptian? No. Was she Greek? Yes. Was she African? Maybe biologically through ancestry we can't fully trace. Definitely geographically and culturally present in a continent often erased from classical narratives. Was she white by modern definitions? Almost certainly not by today's racial categories applied to North African populations. She defies easy categorization, which makes her threatening to people who need neat boxes for history. History hasn't been fair to Cleopatra. It rarely is to women who held real power outside approved channels, but the evidence is there for anyone willing to read beyond Shakespeare and Hollywood. She wasn't perfect. She was ruthless, calculating, sometimes cruel, always political, but she was real. And the real Cleopatra is infinitely more impressive than the cardboard cutout we inherited. If this kind of deep dive historical storytelling gives you a better view of the past that helps you navigate the present, please subscribe and share this video. Our next episode tackles another woman whose reputation was assassinated by men who feared what she actually achieved, Catherine de' Medici. You won't want to miss how one queen built France into a superpower and got written down as a poisoner for her trouble. Until then, remember Cleopatra not as the seductress Rome needed her to be, but as the sovereign she proved herself to be. The truth is always worth finding, especially when it costs something to see.